So good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Hans, for that introduction. And you'll see from this slide that a number of people who have been the key movers behind this initiative will be saying a few remarks to communicate hopefully some of the excitement as well as some of the detail that's associated with this project. Well, it's been in gestation for quite some time, but one of the significant things about this initiative is that it was a group of funders who were concerned that not everything was being done perhaps in the right way, perhaps with the right vision or intensity, and so they were keen to see a new initiative, and that has evolved into the International Wheat Yield Partnership. Well, in detail, the aspiration is to do something about the wheat yield potential. Many people think that 50% in 20 years is eminently doable. Now, that doesn't mean to say that all farmers around the world will be growing wheat at that level. Of course not, of course not. But doing something that's out of the ordinary to really overcome some of the principal constraints, the genetic constraints associated with the yield potential of wheat, seemed one of those sorts of ideas that really should be tackled, and should be tackled now. Business as usual has to go on. Business as usual will gradually make improvements. But for many of us, business as usual is not acceptable. There really has to be something that science can do that overcomes business as usual or the constraints of business as usual, and this partnership attempts to do that. And of course, if you're going to be outrageous to go to these stretch goals, then of course you want to attract the most relevant best groups in the world. But if it's going to be more than a research program, then you've really got to get any discoveries into elite germplasm, and then you've got to get that elite germplasm to where it counts, where it matters, into breeding programs, and then out around the world. And if you're concerned about feeding the world, then you're concerned to engage both the private and the public sector. If you want to see it done as efficiently as possible, one hopes that it will be inspired and managed by a team and a structure that really is worthy of the goals. And the funders and all concerned are really engaged with this sense of urgency that we've been hearing all week. Well, I don't really need to spend much time this afternoon on the why now. It's most of you in this room will know much better than I why there's every reason to take a stretch goal and try and do something about it. The demands are increasing. The rate of gain in breeding programs has slowed and concerns us all. It is a time when the private sector and governments have picked up their enthusiasm. There are a lot of other initiatives going on around the world, but perhaps not focused on genetic yield potential in quite the same way as this do. And as we've been hearing all week, there are really a lot of exciting new technologies. And if you listen to Rob Fraley this morning, you'll certainly have captured the same kinds of thinking that is behind the funders' minds about this initiative. So, of course, there is an enormous amount of progress in the underpinning science that can be brought to bear. When it comes to thinking about what would be the scientific breakthroughs, then there is progress in many of these. I've just written the word photosynthesis. You'll hear a little bit more than that from me in a moment. So it's not as if there aren't some exciting developments to develop further. And of course, the urgency factor is an enormous driver. Breeding takes a long time, inevitably, and so every year we delay is another year before anything could be realized. So as you've heard, there was a technical committee set up, and that's what I happened to chair and why I'm standing here, and a report was produced. There are 6 themes were recommended, and I'll show you something about that later on. And not surprisingly, these themes had some close relationship to what other people around the world had been thinking was the right thing to do, and certainly the team here at CIMMYT, where the detail is very similar to what had been started in the Wheat Yield Consortium. So to say a little bit about the science, I just want to use this diagram very quickly. So here you have the seedling at emergence, and over here you have the machine that has the job of getting as much goodies packed into that grain as possible. That's the machine that we all know and love, but that's the machine that we're all limited by. It's really a remarkable piece of genetic engineering on one hand, but it's also miserably poor on the other, as we all know. And so we really need to design a better machine. Now, where does this machine come from? Of course, we all know in this room that it comes from the outcome of the germinating seed and the interaction with the environment in terms of light and carbon dioxide and water and goodies in the soil. But the machine that's up here is limited by the way the machine is built. And as you all know, and what this slide aims to emphasize, is that if we don't get the machine being built fast enough and well enough and big enough from back here, then it's not going to be in place there. So it's long been recognized that you want to start building the machine as early as possible. One knows that you shouldn't play around with flowering time too much, otherwise you get a misfit with the environment. So you've got a fixed time in which to build the machine. And so one's got to make that building process more efficient. And that's all about capturing incident light and radiation use and efficiency and building more biomass that then, with a bigger machine and a more efficient machine, will do a much better job over here. You all understand that, but I've used this pictorial language to really give a general description of what the challenge is. Fortunately, we now know a lot more about the details of the existing machine, the genetic variation, and what we might want to seek to build another machine. Well, there's many developments, and I've just picked 2 or 3 slides to illustrate this. We saw out in the field the blimp and the helicopters for being able to look at canopies. Remember, the efficiency that I'm talking about, it all comes out of a canopy. And so very often you can't assay what you want at the single plant level. And so we here see technical developments right here in CIMMYT about the ability to get above the canopy, make lots of measurements, and earlier this week I was shown data where the The output as measured from way above the canopy and measured on the ground are indeed showing good correlations, and so one can know that these sorts of technical developments are going to be marvelous for finding new genetic variants and scoring them and understanding them at the crop level. Well, that's an example that's just symbolic of many other sorts of machines. We saw the phenotyper this week, and it's those kinds of developments that are exciting opportunities for tackling this. We've heard this week about the fast-growing array of germplasm that is available to be screened, and now money and people and motivation behind that screening is occurring. There's the wheats at all levels, and these wheat relatives have been screened, and I've heard this week that the fact that there is indeed increased enhanced photosynthetic efficiencies being found in diploid wheats, and there's data coming from CIMMYT, from the UK, from Australia. So it's not as if there isn't genetic variation that's accessible for wheat, but as yet it's really never been tested in the right environments and the right elite germplasm. We must do it. Then, of course, there's always the feature of architecture and the spikes and awns doing their stuff of photosynthesis maybe needs to be appreciated much more. For years now, the physiologists have been absolutely clear that the Rubisco enzyme, which is a key one for determining photosynthesis, is very poor, it's very inefficient, particularly in wheat. And that there is programs looking for better variants in wheat, and that really needs to be done at a pace to see if there are some rare forms of this machine that we need to build that'll be much better. And this Rubisco gets looked after by another protein that's called an activase, especially at high temperatures. And there's quite a lot of genetic variation in these activase genes, but they've not yet been harnessed and brought together to see how they can lead to a much more efficient process. And then if in the transgenic world, there's really bringing in much more efficient Rubisco proteins which exist in the world into wheat. There's so many things that are on the drawing board that it's high time we started, and that's inspired a lot of this program. At the end of the day, when you've built a better machine, one that's bigger, better, more efficient, then you've got to get that carbon growing into the grain. And of course, a lot of the carbon is tied up in a biomass and is not really accessible. So you need the ongoing photosynthesis in that machine to generate some soluble form which is redistributable to the grain. And the hope is that if you've built a much more efficient photosynthetic machine, then you will indeed be able to have a lot more soluble carbohydrate out of a bigger machine and make it available for the grain, far above something that's available today. And then we all know harvest index is crucial. You've got to get that carbon and nitrogen into the grain, and the challenge will be to get those harvest indexes way up into the top right, substantially above 0.54 if we can do it. So it's not just about fixing photosynthesis. It's perhaps having discovered step by step, year on year, decade on decade, how to build better and better engines, a better and better total machine where through breeding and selection, one is harmonizing all the parts to end up with an ever better machine capable of delivering the goods into the grain. And so there's a lot of other things that you have to do that I've just talked about. It's not just doing a bit of research, it's really understanding the genetic basis of the traits that you come across, stacking them, of course using all the state-of-the-art technology, of course evaluating in the field settings, of course doing the pre-breeding and selections and moving forward. So this is an applied program that the funders want to take right to the end. And so these are the 6 project areas. I don't need to say any more about them because really I've just described them. But this is the basis from which we hope the dreams can be realized, and there will be calls for proposals, as you'll hear, hopefully trying to attract the very best in the world and inspire them to come together to take on this challenge. Now, you can't do this as an isolated lab. You've got to be in partnerships, and remember this is a session on partnerships, and there's no better place to get a lot of the sorts of work done that has to be done, namely turning discoveries into optimized forms in elite germplasm than in CIMMYT. And so I'm going to ask Hans now to say a few words about the aspirations that relate to engaging CIMMYT and others.
Thank you. Well, thank you. And I think it has been very clear that this is an extremely complex challenge, because I mean traits like photosynthesis need to be improved, lodging resistance, the transfer of carbohydrates to the spike. There are tremendous areas of research, and there will be progress made for individual traits or individual genes will be identified. But then the challenge is to put this together, basically to glue it together, or so to speak, to put the engine into a chassis. And this will be done here in Obregon. I have pointed out in several times now that Obregon really has the advantage that material which is developed here can go out to breeding programs around the world. That's one thing. On the other side, also we really have here extremely good environment to check for the radiation, because we have a lot of sun here, so we can also look into this one here. And so there will be the IVIP Breeding and Research Hub will be here in Mexico. A lot of the field-based research will be done here in Obregon, and there will be access to this hub here in Obregon, but since we cannot allow everybody to send physiological traits to be tested here, the access to this hub will be decided then by the Scientific Impact and Evaluation Board, and this will be usually related to projects which will be funded through the IVIP. What is absolutely needed here is that we have here a critical mass of physiologists, geneticists, breeders, and support staff who really can work on the different areas of interest. And I think those of you who attended the field day, I think you saw that there is really a critical mass of scientists working in this area. There is the state-of-the-art high-throughput field phenotyping platform for trait validation, and this will be also a very important component of the research. We have a genotyping platform and the marker library, and quite a bit of this research will be also done here in our lab, our new buildings in El Batan, or in other labs around the world. There has to be trait introgression platform, and this is really done via the Mexico CIMMYT Kenya shuttle now, where you introgress traits into the elite material. Because one thing is clear, only once these new traits, and in particular the trait combination, are in elite background, they really will be used widely. We have a biosecure transgenic testing platform because part of the research will be on transgenics, in particular related to the Rubisco research. And at our headquarters, we have a biosafety 2 laboratory where we can do this research. And also in Mexico, we currently run already freeland trials, so we have the opportunity also. And our cooperation and collaboration with Mexican authorities in this area is very, very good. We have to host and support services for Ivy partners. There will be research, there will be trades developed, and what we hope and expect is that then the researchers somewhere in the world who work on this in wheat will send seed to Mexico, and our people here will take care that the material is properly sown. And at the key time for evaluating the trait, the researcher would then come here to Mexico, collect data, but they would not have to be here all the time. So these services will be provided here also by the Mexican hub. The data management and sharing and the technical cooperation is also a major component, and these services also will be provided by CIMMYT in this part. And then finally, there will be also a need, and not a need, it is a must to integrate with the International Wheat Improvement Network and the national programs, because that is our outlet. We work with basically everybody in the world. This material will be made available, and through the international nurseries which we have, we can reach breeding programs and scientists around the world in the shortest time possible. Okay, now how will IVIP interact? I mean, this sounds all very, very complex, and it really is. But what really is the principle of IVIP is that we want to engage with the best scientific groups in the world working in this area who can contribute. And the approach will be, there will be some commissioned research, but there will be also significant calls for competitive grants, and there we really hope to attract the very, very best teams around the world. And we also link with international activities which go on. The Wheat Initiative, Helen just pointed out several of the relevant expert working groups, for example in the wheat information systems or in the sequencing. We monitor also very closely what is going on in C4 rice, because that could be a breakthrough at one time. We will work with, of course, Wheat CRP, this is where the hub is hosted. We have RIPE, the BGRI and others, and they all interact and make sure that anything which is there is then transferred into the elite lines. We have on the other side relevant national programs. National programs, National Advanced Research Institutes, National Agricultural Research Institutes, universities. There are national major research programs going on which also work in this area. For example, in the UK, WISP or the 2020. Breed wheat in France, Triticea CAP, in the US, CTEC, and many others. And we really will assure that we do not duplicate that, but that the research there has an immediate impact by really being very well aware what they do. They will hopefully also participate in this. So I think this is a tremendous challenge for international coordination, and you will hear a little bit more how this is done. All of this scientific research which is going on is then combined in the IVIP, in the International Wheat Yield Partnership, and there is also the private sector very much engaged. The private sector you will see this is represented in the Scientific Impact and Evaluation Board. We also know that the private sector will contribute through technologies which they have to really make this a global effort. We then have here the national breeding programs, which also contribute and benefit from it. And then we have here the international outlet, which are the international nursery systems. And all of this together only makes sense when eventually the farmers have higher yields and more grain in their bags. So I hope I didn't confuse you, but what it really is, this is an international effort where we basically want to bring the best research in this area together to increase the wheat yield potential, the yield potential of wheat. Okay, and now okay, it's Mike's turn.
Thanks, Hans. You've heard that the private sector is a key player, and so now I'll invite Mike Robinson, who is the leader of the Syngenta Foundation, the foundation, not the company, who has special interest in public-private partnerships. Mike.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll just say a few words about how, why public-private partnerships are important in this program. Well, there's probably three key reasons. One is, of course, to try and bring together the best brains and capabilities to guide and carry out the research program. And then secondly, we have to use all the channels available to us, public or private, to deliver higher yielding seeds to all farmers, small holder farmers in Africa or South Asia, or to sophisticated growers in other parts of the world. So, and thirdly, I think it's also an element of trying to balance the technology push with the demand pull, and I think that's something that we can achieve through this public-private partnership. So how are we going to do it? Well, we've developed a membership program that encourages participation of all wheat companies, small and large. Those that have R&D capability are offered the chance to help guide the research program, but all members will have the chance to help with enabling the broad deployment of the outputs of the program. So through the partnership, we will encourage sharing of wheat germplasm, the application of the most up-to-date technologies, and very importantly, develop better communication and build on trust between the sectors. So our role in this, the Syngenta Foundation, has been to help support the development of a PPP fund, a public-private partnership fund, paid for partly out of the membership fees, but also partly out of donation, and that will be used to support the overheads and running of the partnership. It'll also be used to develop communication tools. It will be used to support meeting overheads, develop impact metrics and monitoring system, help fund the management position, and also will help fund a public-private academic scholarship, or a number of scholarships in wheat breeding. I think that's a great opportunity too. So therefore, this means that as much of the money coming from the public sector as possible will be spent on the research. Well, how's it gone so far? It's very early days. We've only contacted the private sector in the last couple of weeks, but already I think we're very pleased to see substantial interest in membership by both large and small companies. And of course, we're looking forward to having many more join over the coming period. But of course, joining is just the start. We've now got to work hard to roll out the program, create the partnership, and start to deliver on the targets. We think the approach is a good example of a multilateral PPP and eminently replicable. Well, there's still an open invitation to those companies that perhaps hear this for the first time. We'd be very welcome to join the partnership by either contacting me or any of the members of the organizing committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Don't lose sight that in your head that this is a great stretch goal to do something really substantial, that's not been in the hands of any wheat breeder yet, namely to build this much more efficient machine to push up the genetic gain substantially. Now, I'm going to call on Steve Visscher, who is the Deputy Chief Executive and Chief Operating Officer of BBSRC in the UK, which was a major funder of science, to tell us more about the organization and governance that clearly has to be strong in order to keep this kind of show on the road. Steve.
So what I would like to do is to talk a little bit about structure, funding, and some next steps. But to start with a sort of cautionary word, it's having fantastic ideas, having money, having lots of goodwill will not deliver this program. It has to have good governance, excellent program management if it's to deliver. Clearly, what you've heard already, you will see that the interactions which are planned are complex, and so we have to put appropriate resource and expertise into securing a good structure. And one of the things that we hope that the private sector can contribute to this is just some of those disciplines that are needed. I'm going to quickly talk you through this slide, starting at the top with the Science and Impact Executive Board, which this is the main decision-making board, but the thing I want to pull out is the word impact. That was deliberately put in there just to remind the members, whether they be private or public background, this is about delivering to the farmer. Take it to the farmer, as Norman Borlaug has said. We have to keep that sort of spirit in mind. You've heard, moving to the Green Centre, you've heard from Hans about the breeding hub. And of course, we need a program director who can pull this together. And that's a critical appointment, and he or she will need some additional support as well, which will be put in place. Then, of course, we do need, moving to the bottom box in the International Wheat Yield Partnership Science Leadership Committee, we need expertise to come in and to provide that technical support and background. So this committee will include experts from some of the major programs and independent experts. Now, in order to kick off this process, particularly in the executive board, I'm delighted that Dick Flavel has kindly offered to stay with us, having been the chair of the technical committee, and to help kick off and secure an even transition into the partnership by chairing the Science and Impact Executive Board. Briefly on the other parts of the diagram, there will be competitively funded projects. We don't have time to talk in detail about that, but there will be a review process, and the calls will be, and the content will be approved by the executive board. You've heard mention already about aligned programs, and this is important because there clearly is a lot of excellent work out there already, and if we can align those programs with the aims of the Wheat Yield Partnership, there's an opportunity for real synergy. And I'm delighted to say that having been in contact with some of the major programs, they've indicated an enthusiasm to be involved. Not to be funded again, perhaps other than a little bit of travel money and such like, but to share results and outcomes. Data management, Hans mentioned, and I think that's a critical area. And when Helen Lucas was talking about expert working groups, there is one on wheat information systems. And so there's an opportunity to draw on the good work of the Wheat Initiative to help support this as well. The public-private partnerships and the industrial input, it's be vital that we have a regular forum for dialogue and to help guide the overall program. So, in terms of where are we now, you can see and read this slide largely for yourself. We're in the process of appointing the director at the moment and hope to be interviewing within the next month. The establishment of the committees and so on is there. But importantly, we're also very keen to ensure that the first competitive call is launched. So the key theme across the bottom here is partnership, and that's really at the heart of all this and must be there throughout. So just briefly on funding, the ambition for the partnership is to invest $100 million over the first 5 years. And I'm delighted that already we have very strong commitments for at least half that sum. We have offers of in-kind contributions. But of course, we will also still be seeking additional support from other partners. And I'll say a little bit more about that later.
Thank you, Steve. Now, Steve mentioned the word impact, and of course there's all kinds of outputs which ought to come from this kind of initiative to generate all sorts of impacts. And I'd like to now to invite Dr. Nora Lapitan, who's recently joined the USAID, who is also one of the founding funders of this initiative, to make some remarks.
Thank you, Dick. So now you've heard about the objectives of this international wheat partnership, and you've heard about the structure. And so what I would like to turn our attention to now is, what are the anticipated benefits of this wheat international partnership? So the first one that we can expect is the development of a strong global wheat public-private research community. And the BGRI has served as a good model for that. We have seen how the community has come together. So, and this will only work if that research community shares resources, capabilities, data, and ideas to improve wheat yield potential. And we can anticipate that this would lead to the transformation of the way wheat researchers work, so that previously where wheat researchers work individually in their own research programs, now wheat researchers with different expertise will have to come together. And instead of results from cutting-edge technologies becoming available only through the long process of the lengthy process of publication, now we can see that the results from upstream research can be translated immediately to the improvement of breeding lines. So candidate genes, for example, can readily be incorporated, can immediately be incorporated into elite lines that can be tested in different environments that will lead to the fast development of elite lines that are readily accessible to breeders across the world. We can expect the training of a new generation of breeders across the world. And this would have to be breeders who not only see plants with their eyes, but can see how plants and which plants will perform well in different environments by looking at genotypes. We can anticipate that new discoveries that will lead to new projects that will be funded from other sources, leveraging initial investments. So now I would like to bring us back to why we are here and why we're doing this. We have seen this graph many times during the past several days, and I will not go into detail into this. So this shows the trajectory. So this blue line shows the trajectory of the cereal production at the current rate of production. And we also see that this is the increase that needs to happen in order to meet the food demands of 9.6 billion people by 2050. So according to the World Bank, wheat production has to increase by 60% in order to meet the food demands by 2050. So ultimately, what we hope to accomplish, if successful, is that by significantly increasing wheat yield potential by up to 50%, we could generate up to 160 million tons of wheat per year, or an estimated $50 to $100 billion in additional annual income. So at the center of this, as you have seen from the previous slides, this is all about the farmer. So with this additional income, there is a chance of lifting the poorest smallholder farmers out of poverty. And so is it ambitious? Yes, it is truly an ambitious goal, but it's a goal that's worthy of our time and investment. And so going for that goal would be an honor that would be fitting to the legacy that Norman Borlaug has urged us to do, to take the results of our research to the farmers. Thank you.
You know that this whole program is being officially launched today, but I hope you can see that there's been a lot of preparation and thought in getting us to this point. And also remember that the theme of this session this afternoon is partnerships. And so I'd like Steve to really bring this presentation to you to an end by saying a little bit more about the partnerships that are in place and so on. So Steve.
Thank you, Dick. So this slide gives you a flavour of the breadth of support that we enjoy already, and I think you will recognise that the different characteristics of many of these organisations and the way in which they can provide resource, whether that's into a central funding pot or to fund their own researchers, that all differs. But one of the features of this initiative we recognise is that as the globalisation of this sort of activity takes place, we have to be very flexible in dealing with the funding regimes in different organisations. And I think within the interim board, we have found some ways of doing that. I'm not going to go into those today, but people can pick those up with questions if they wish. But the question mark in the middle is crucial. This is a partnership. It's not an exclusive partnership. We want to be inclusive from all continents and all sectors, and we really do want to build that participation. So we've seen very good support so far, but we need more. And as I said earlier, there's also a need for some additional funding. But we are in a position that we can kick off the initiative, we can launch calls, and that is, I think, extremely good news. Thank you very much.
So a lot is in place, governance systems, funding, support, partnership, CIMMYT, and so it is time ready to be launched. You may have seen at the break reference to some of the material that's appeared in the press as a consequence of this week. A press release went out about the International Wheat Yield Partnership, and you can find reference to it in an editorial in Nature, in Bloomberg Newsweek, I think in Business Newsweek, and hopefully in many other places as the rest of the world gets to hear about it. So in wrapping up the presentation, and before we have a few minutes of discussion, I would just like to say that this is an enormous stretch goal. We want to attract the very best scientists who believe that they've got germplasm, insight, phenotyping, genetic variation, genomics, physiology, but above all, have a belief in the vision that something must be done to improve the efficiency of the plants we know and love as wheat, and the belief in science that working together, something can be achieved that is way, way, way more than the sum of the parts. And I think it's the belief of the funders, as I've listened to them and as they put this initiative out, and those people on that slide, it's their belief that something can and should be done. And so it's part of, I think, the legacy from Norman Borlaug that we take this opportunity to start down that road, and it may take us 10 years to be sure that it's eminently doable, even though there are many, probably in this room, who are such strong believers in the role of science, technology, genetics, physiology, the new whole genomics, genetics, the new ways of breeding, the new ways of managing data globally, internationally, such as in the Wheat Initiative, that it's really a new day. So I think that's all I want to say, but now let's open it up and spend just a few minutes with any questions and answers and discussion. So Hans, I don't know whether you want to orchestrate this.
So you have here the summary of this, and we would now like to get some questions for clarifications, comments from your side. Yeah, okay, please, up there. Are there some microphones? Do we have?
Hello?
Okay, well, we can, yeah.
Hello. Yeah, it's working. Okay, thank you. Well, Amitabh Rahim, Texas A&M University. You talked about Rubisco, and research has shown beyond doubt that hybrid wheat has higher level of Rubisco. That's one way of capturing that high level of Rubisco. And you talked about the need to increase yield potential by 50% or 60% by 2050. And 10% of that alone can come from hybrid wheat. So we need the tools to facilitate cheap seed production for that to be adopted. We had a good talk last night by Tony Visscher about the yield potential. And we know that a lot of that data is exaggerated because we use netting system. We don't have the EDU type that can support a large number of tillers, a large number of grains, and heavy grain weight, because these are going to lodge. So we need to talk about straw strength. This is a trait that we need to talk about. Matthew Reynolds had talked about that, discussed it in some of his papers. Also, you talked about the fact that, and Hans, you mentioned that you're going to use Obregon as the hub for screening traits. Now, Obregon can only be used for testing spring wheat. We cannot expect to achieve 60% yield gain by 2050 from spring wheat alone. Okay? That is, you're talking about Mexico, you're talking about Asia, about Africa, but don't forget that the chunk of wheat globally is growing in the US, Canada, Europe, Argentina, Ukraine, Russia, China, and these are countries that produce winter wheat. I know that the focus is to make the stakeholder in Africa and Asia productive to meet their needs. Winter wheat also has a lot of traits that can be transformed into spring wheat. We talked about Sanjay Rajaram and the fact that he developed the dairy wheats like Braun F76 or Seri M82, which took us to a higher level of productivity. There are drought tolerance traits, insect pest resistance traits in winter wheat, quality traits that we can bring into the spring wheat bowl. But we cannot do that in Mexico. We have to find another site beside Obregon to be able to evaluate these traits. Thank you.
Okay. Can I comment very fast? I think hybrid wheat is part of the solution, and we look into it, and that will be another avenue. The concept, why is Mexico used here, is that with the shuttle, and we can most efficiently put it into elite backgrounds. But the idea is that these genes then in elite backgrounds are used around the world. Winter wheat breeding programs around the world cross with Mexican wheats. But you have to transfer the genes into an elite background, and from there on, this is then the platform where the breeders will use it. And of course, it has to be introgressed into all the winter wheat germplasm which is available around. But I think that is possibly an easier task once you have it in a elite background than doing this 5 or 6 times in parallel. I mean, for high latitude, for low latitude, for winter wheat, for extreme winter wheat. The idea is to make a machine which can be transferred and used by breeding programs around the world and then introgressed in their locally adapted material. That is the idea. Okay. Yes, please.
Yeah, Hans, I would like to know why ICARDA is not a partner. The second thing, why agronomy is not also part of your strategy.
Okay, first, why is ICARDA not a partner? ICARDA is part of CRP wheat, and so I think they are partner in this and they will contribute. Now, agronomy, I mean, I have to make this clear. I usually have a slides where I have 10 points how you can raise productivity. And agronomy, I have made the point, is extremely important. But at this time, it's like making a new car. We talk about fixing, improving the engine. And then this engine has to be adopted also in the different systems, and then agronomy research come in. But if we say agronomy is a major component of this, then we are back to wheat improvement in general. And we want to have a highly focused project where we improve the engine, and then it will be put into the different genotypes which are used in the different systems. That is then again the adoption and the adoption of this material in local breeding programs.
Sorry to react very quickly. If the engine is put into very harsh condition, it will collapse the first day.
Okay, this is another point, but I mean, we talk about...
So agronomy is the highway that can bring these varieties with high potential to benefit farmers.
Okay, if we are in extremely stressed environments, then we have a different issue. We have then to look into the heat and drought tolerance. That is another issue which we want to address. But if you go into some areas in the Punjab of India and Pakistan, the yield potential is basically 7.5 tons. How do you bring this to 10 tons?
We are making 6 tons rain-fed with good agronomy. I can take you to Algeria to see that if you want.
Okay. Well, I think, yeah, okay. Tony, yeah, we move on.
Thank you, Hans. I think it all sounds very exciting, and building on Robert Paulberg's talk this morning, it seems to me that you will need to have a strategy on GM wheat, and I'm wondering if you've already thought about that, because many of the things that you're proposing to change, particularly in the photosynthetic system, have to be genetically engineered.
Tony, okay, maybe you can, I didn't really understand.
Within the program, we absolutely want to explore variation that's in the chromosomes of wheat and its relatives to see what can be put together that contributes to this bigger engine. But I think many people might believe that the power that comes from making physiologically sound changes by exploiting new genes is going to be essential. I think we'll learn this as we go, and as we go, we're going to be constantly evaluating what we're making and the acceptability of those kinds of things to the farmers. So we're not assuming that it will be transgenic. We might expect that if we want to deliver something with a really supercharged engine, that's maybe what we have to do. But I think many are convinced that we need to learn how to make the product. And when we've got the kind of product or pre-product, then at least we'll know what the enhanced genetic potential is, and then how and when that gets converted into real products into farmers' fields, I mean, is debate for a new day. But the issue today is, can we design a product that really overcomes the lousy efficiency that is absolutely firmly documented about the photosynthesis and the radiation utilization efficiency, and then the transfer into harvest index. I didn't mention lodging. It was mentioned in with the earlier comments. Of course, all those sorts of attributes have got to be built in, but let's first figure out what the turbocharging is and where it might come from and what the design needs to be.
Yeah. I mean, I want just one more clarification. A little bit of a comparison is the research on synthetics. The research of synthetics started in 1980, and it took nearly 30 years until the first varieties from this research were released. Now they have a big impact in crop improvement. And I think this project also, it is basic research, but it will develop new traits in new gene combinations which really have an impact on yield potential. And then I think we see the fruits from this research in 20, 25 years. That's why we have a long-term project. But I think we see in some environments that yields are plateauing. And what can we do? Yes, we can argument about agronomy and all the other things. That will be done. There will be continuous conventional breeding. There will be genomic selection done. But this is something which brings something on top which is really separate and makes it available to the breeders. That is the objective of it. We don't say that this is the solution for it. This will bring additional options in the next 10, 20 years to breeders to raise yield potential. Prabhu, yeah? Okay, well, we can.
Thank you. Hans, I'd like to know if there's any precondition to join this partnership mode, because I see the omission of China and India very obvious here. We grow about 33% of the global area and equal production to wheat. And our research system is really well established. And I believe India has one of the largest national programs of wheat breeding. If you have some kind of conditions for joining this partnership, we would like to know that. And if allowed, we would like to join. ICR should like to be partner in this.
Steve Visscher will answer this.
I could respond to that. The list up here is to some extent incomplete, and there are ongoing discussions with other countries and organizations at this point that are not complete. So, I fully expect that a number of the sort of obvious gaps on this chart at the moment will be fulfilled. On the question of the criteria for joining, we're looking for organizations, funders who can provide resources, either in cash into, and there's flexibility that there can be some conditions attached to that, or able to bring significant in-kind resource. So if I just look at the examples here, so INRA in France, for example, is not a research funding organization, but it has a substantial capability and has offered to bring in-kind resource. Similarly, USDA, ARS, and there are others as well.
And one more point, I mean, joining, there will be also calls for competitive, there is a call for competitive grants, and I think that is open to participate for everybody. So, but this is truly an international effort, and I mean, India is number 2 in the world in terms of wheat production. China, I mean, if we don't include China and India into this, somehow we would have a failure, right? Okay, and then, yes, Dr. Sharma, and then I think we come to approach the little by little end. Yeah, okay, you will be the last.
India or other countries, they are already a partner in CG systems as such. That's one point. Then there is wheat initiative. So again, partnership mode with funding. So now a third, or then BGRI, and now this. What I feel is that, don't you think there should be one bigger umbrella already existing as a CG system? But then under the CG system, if we are going to take up trait-wise systems again in a funding mode by the partners, I don't know how things will move. Like a country, any country will have to think whether it has to pay for the CG systems to be a partner or under such type of initiatives. So such way, I mean, we have to be very clear about these things. Secondly, at this time, while we, for the last 20 years, 30 years, talking more about rust resistance, and most of the breeders making selection for resistance rather than really breeding for yield traits, it's really a good initiative that at least we started talking beside resistance on yield as such, enhancing in different countries and also meeting the 60%. But then funding mode and things, I think we really need to, it's a concern, I think, of most of the countries, because what I feel is that they are the bigger partners. But then for countries like us, we have to think that this is an important way of partnership, but then couldn't it be fitted into a broader CG system mode? So I think we can have a separate discussion or something like that. Thank you.
I can just comment briefly. I think clearly in terms of engaging with new partners, one way actually, just as a quick reminder, there is a website which gives contact details, and I think in many cases we do need to have a direct discussion. So we'll be delighted to talk in more detail to any of you in the room, either immediately after this session or subsequently, and to follow up with that. I'm sorry, otherwise, I think if I get into too much detail, we really haven't got the time now.
Right, yeah. Okay, and then the last question from Eric, and then I will close this launch. Huh? Huh? Oh, okay. Ooh. Okay. Okay. I don't mind. I mean, we can go on for another 2 hours. I have no problem with it.
Okay. Are we turned on? Can you hear me? No, I have just a simple question. It was about the goal. You say you want to increase the potential yield of wheat by 50%. Now, if I was a funder, I would say, what is the potential right now? and I think it's around 12 or 14 tons per hectare. So now you're going to increase that by 50%. Now we're talking about 20 tons per hectare on wheat yields. Is that what you're trying to say? That's one issue. I think that you have to be a little bit clearer about the goal, and then you take the modelers and the physiologists to put together what kind of structure does it take to put that much grain on above the ground. So that would be one of my concerns. And the other concern I have is that the highest yields we see now in wheat are from in places where there's a pretty long growing season. So you're extending the growing season, and that gives you more photosynthetic opportunities, and that's where the highest yields are coming from. So I think that's relevant to the comment earlier about the winter wheat thing. In other words, extending the growing season from the early fall later into the spring, as we would see in many of the European countries and Chile and that sort of thing. That's all my comment.
Okay. You want to comment, yeah?
I'll just quickly comment, Cal. Of course, defining what is the genetic potential is a complex thing. I think the shorthand response is you take a given environment in a sustainable way, that you're not overloading nitrogen and everything else that you possibly could, but under real farmer conditions, what is that gain, the potential today? Of course, it'll differ in different places, in different genetic backgrounds, but whatever that figure is in all those places, can we push it up by 50%? The second point? Yeah. Well, that's exactly the point. If the season is not to be extended, then you just need to build that machine much more efficiently during the fixed period. So I think the idea is to not play around with the phenology except to optimize it, to stick with what the practices are that the farmers want to do, to adopt, but just get the building done faster. But of course, then that runs into nitrogen and water, and this is not the time and place to get into all that complexity, but the research programs intended are the places to do it.
Okay, and now really the last one is Eric, and then I cut it off.
Just a very practical question. What's the proposed mechanism to integrate quickly and resource the current activities that are going on within the wheat yield consortium?
Well, the Wheat Yield Consortium, initiated by CIMMYT and supported by a number of the people in this room, has been a tremendous first step. And as was said earlier, some of the thinking that's gone into this has been heavily influenced by the consortium. Now, as the program expands and we try and open it up to the scientists throughout the world, that's the sort of change. It's not, in a sense, the Wheat Yield Consortium was a defined consortium. This is trying to broaden it out. That's not to belittle in any way the contributions that have been made by the Wheat Yield Consortium. I sat in on part of this at the workshop this week, and it was evident that some good results were starting to emerge from their work, and that can be carried forward in an appropriate way into this program.
Okay, well, I hope we have clarified some of it. It's a very ambitious project. It's a new way of approaching something as complex as yield potential. We are aware there are many other avenues to raise yield, But I mean, just think about, I mean, in 20 or 30 years, if we talk about we need 60% extra. Wheat, of course, that also comes from low yielding environments, but we also have to see that wheat is the most widely cultivated crop currently. With 220 million hectares, the average global mean is 3 tons per hectare. If we could make a breakthrough in yield potential and really increase it, that could free a lot of land either for other crops or take out some of the very marginal wheat production areas and put that under other crops under permanent pasture. I think it's one research avenue which we need to look into. There will be others where we have to do the same. Another big challenge for wheat is heat and drought. I personally see tremendous spillover from this research here on a potential project on heat, and I think we need really to just discuss this in the near future, how we tackle that. Okay. Okay, with this one, if there are no absolute burning problems anymore, burning questions, I would like to thank all of you, and we have now happy hour after the closing ceremony, so I think you can have further questions and discussions during the happy hour over a beer, and over a beer when the mood is relaxed, something excellent ideas are produced. I know this from many carne asadas which we have here, right? Okay, now please, I still, before we close now, I would like to start now the closing session, but before I do this, I would like to recognize one person in particular who over the last years has tremendously contributed to make IWIP, the Wheat Yield Consortium, a reality, and that is Matthew Reynolds. Matthew. And then and Matthew has worked over the last 5 years really so much. He brought the groups of the Wheat Yield Consortium. He was the mastermind behind it, and I think we have now really a very good foundation with IWIP to move this forward. Then I have another question. Is Peter Hobbs in the room? No, he left yesterday. Oh, okay. Okay, then it's okay. Thank you very much. So with this one, I would like now to come to the closing session. I think it was a very intensive week, but it also was a great week. We started out with the Borlaug Global Rust Initiative to talk one of the models for international cooperation on how to address rust resistance and how to transfer the products from that program into farmers' fields. We then had I think, a very nice field day with a very relaxing carne asada. And then for the last 3 days, I think we had a very wide range of discussions. And what we really planned from the beginning, as I said before, we wanted to show that wheat is really more than just breeding. It is part of the culture of many. And also we have the systems research, we have the quality aspect. So we really tried to put a program together which is also interest to a wider circle than just wheat geneticists. We also hope that one of the outcomes here we just have seen the IWIP, the International Wheat Yield Partnership, as a launch. There have been also many other discussions here on how we can bring the private-public partnerships. I had today a very good discussions, a first discussion with Oxfam. Why don't we work closer together with some of the biggest NGOs? In Bangladesh has the biggest NGO with more than 100,000 people. I think there are ways of really making sure that the technologies which are developed can reach farmers much, much faster, and that is the ultimate stick against which we are evaluated. What I need to do now, and this is with a great pleasure, it was an intensive week, but this was only possible because we had a lot of people who helped us. And it started with our donors, and I really would like to name them once more because the support we got from this was tremendous. It was the diamond sponsors, Monsanto and Harvard Buffett, the Gold Water for Food Institute in Nebraska, Limagra and KWS, silver sponsors Bayer, Syngenta and Pioneer. We had the Borlaug Circle, Kansas State University, University of Missouri, College of Food, Agriculture and Natural Resources, and the Sasakafa Africa Association. And we have many other supporters, including CONAGRA, Indian Council on Agricultural Research, and Harvest Plus. Of course, the other very, very big contributor to this conference was the co-host of this, and this was the Patronado, the farmers of this Yaqui Valley, who have made a tremendous financial contribution to make this happen, and also to invite many of you for this conference. You also may have noticed that during this conference, many of you had very good, I think we had here very good internet connection, and also the live streaming of the presentations here was possible thanks to the support from the Mexican telephone company Telmex and Academica, who have provided for the period of this conference a tremendously wide bandwidth, and that really helped everybody. I have to thank our host here, and that is the La Salle University and the team from La Salle University, led by Maria Elena Peralta. Is she in the room? Okay, Maria. Okay, please, Then I really have to thank the Borlaug Global Rust Initiative, Cornell University. We have done our frequently conferences together, and I think we get better and better. Really, it is such tremendous support we get from Cornell team. Anna, Kelly, John, the IT team, all to you. Tremendous thanks, because only with your support we were able to make this a big success. Then I think we had a very interesting and challenging field day with the logistics. And there I would like to thank Rodrigo Rascon, the station manager, Karima Mar, Nele Verhust, and Bram Govertz for really putting this in order and make sure that we didn't lose anybody. Nobody had a heat shock and, in the field, and we stayed on time. Thank you very much to all of them. Then to the communication team from CIMMYT, I have mentioned the communication team from Cornell, also to Scott and your team. I think you have done tremendous, and this really has got a lot of attention around the world. So thank you very much to you. Then also, you have seen this beautiful photo outside, and one person has spent a lot of time on it. That was Jesse Dubin. And the other person I also would like to name is Perry Gustafsson, who has tremendously helped in putting proceedings together, but also in making contacts with donors to make sure that we have enough money to conduct this the way we did. Thank you very much. And finally, to the logistical team, who made sure that everybody got here. We had some problems, we had some hiccups because of security, but we got everybody here, and we really hope that we also get you all safely back tonight. But I would like to Liliana, Tere, Ariel, Emma, Fabiola, Jenny, and in particular Peter Cosina, who interacted much with you. For me, this was the most relaxing conference I ever helped to organize, because I basically had nothing to do, because there was such an outstanding team there with such much experience, and it was really tremendous, the team spirit which was shown, and I only can really thank you from my heart for all the work you put into this. And to all who have now forgotten and contributed, I apologize, but it was a tremendous team. And if anybody was forgotten, please apologize. And with this year now, I would like to officially close this Borlaug 100 Summit, and I wish you all a very safe trip home, and I hope that you have much better memories of Mexico than what is very often in the international press. Mexico is a beautiful country. I hope you could see it, and I also hope many of you can come back and see how beautiful it is in other parts of this country. Thank you very much, and have a safe trip home.